Hello, and welcome to the February edition of Book Talks with Mrs. Harris. The first book I'm going to highlight is titled Anya and the Dragon, and it's by Sofia Pasternak. This is going to be found in the Tales section. It is based on some mythology, and it is also available as an ebook. So this book is about Anya, who is 11 years old, and it takes place during the 10th century in Eastern Europe. She is a very strong girl. She's fearless and she loves her family and she'll do anything to save her family. And what's interesting is she is the daughter of one of actually the only Jewish family in her village. And then her family's livelihood is threatened by the Tsar, Czar, who is kind of the person in charge, kind of like a dictator. He's not fond of Jews. And she meets a group of they're called fools, kind of like jokers, and they promise her money in exchange for helping them capture a dragon. And it's very tempting to her because her family is being threatened already. And they want her to help them capture this dragon. It's actually the last dragon in Kievan Rus. And she thinks, well, this seems simple enough. I'll go with him and I'll capture the dragon. She has a little bit of magic in her. But then, as they go deeper into their journey, Anya begins to realize that not everything is as it seems. And she starts to wonder as they search for this dragon, are dragons really the evil monsters that they originally thought? So it's got magic and dragons. It's based on some mythology and it has some adventure and danger in it. So if you like those types of books, come check out Anya and the Dragon. It's found in the Tales section and is also available as an ebook in the library. And on to the next book. This book is titled Some Places More Than Others. It's written by Renee Watson. She is an amazing author. If you have not read any of her other things, I highly suggest that you check out Renee Watson. And this book is a realistic fiction. It is about the main character is Amara, and she is 12 years old, and she lives in Beaverton, Oregon. And life is not very exciting in Oregon for Amara, and all that she wants for her birthday is to visit her father's family in Harlem. But her father has not spoken to her grandfather or his side of the family in over 12 years. But he does go ahead and agree that they can visit Harlem for her birthday. She's very excited to be in Harlem and she gets to learn a lot about Black history and Black cultural heritage. And she gets to meet her grandfather and some cousins that she's never met before. As Amara spends time in New York and Harlem, she learns important lessons about her family, about forgiveness, and about her heritage, all while trying to find where she fits in her family. So again, this is in the realistic fiction section in the Austin Library. And we're moving to the third book. This is titled Fighting Words by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. And this is actually a newer book. I just got this in the library back in November. This is another realistic fiction. It's about a 10-year-old, and her name is Della. And she has a sister, and her sister's name is Suki. And she also has, and this is kind of funny, she has a mouth like a sailor, but her sister tells her when she wants to say a curse word to say snow instead. So her favorite saying is she doesn't take snow from anybody. But Della and Suki have a traumatic backstory. This is a very deep drama to read, but I do think that everyone needs to read this because things like this really do happen in the real world, and we do need to read about things that happen. So Della and her sister, her 16-year-old sister, end up running away. Their mother is in jail, and they lived with their dad, and their dad did something very awful, and we don't find out until a while what exactly dad does, but they run away and they end up in foster care. And Della is telling the story. And at first, she only tells easy stuff about their story. But then her sister Suki actually tries to commit suicide. And Della begins to realize that she needs to use her strong voice for not just herself, but for other people and to be able to help her sister. So this again, it's a deep book. It's got a deep subject to it, but it is a very good story about family, about overcoming trauma and perseverance. This next book I am very super excited about. It's titled Class Act by Jerry Craft. It is a sequel to New Kid, which won the Newbery last year. And actually, New Kid was the very first graphic novel to ever win the Newbery. If you have not read New Kid, I highly suggest you come check that one out. I've got 2 copies of this of New Kid in the library. But if you have read it, then now you need to read Class Act. So Class Act is about 3 boys. We meet Jordan again, who was in New Kid, and Jordan still wants to be an artist, but his parents have sent him to the prestigious academy where he's one of the very few African American students, and he is there on a scholarship. Um, but this time we meet Drew, who is an 8th grader, and we also meet Liam. And Liam is also an 8th grader. The difference is that Drew is also at this school on a scholarship, and he is extremely gifted academically and extremely gifted in basketball. Um, but he's no stranger to the saying that his grandmother always tells him, you have to work twice as hard to be just as good. He's been told that his entire life. But he's starting to feel like he works 10 times as hard and still isn't given the same opportunities that the rich classmates that aren't at this school on a scholarship at this academy, that and he feels like they're taking all these opportunities for granted. And then we also meet Liam, who is one of the rich students that are at the academy. But we get to kind of see into Liam's life also, where um, Liam, even though he's rich and Drew thinks he's privileged and gets all these opportunities, we get to see that Liam's parents are just ignore him, and he is always with his nanny and not with his parents. So Drew kind of sets out to Drew's the main character, even though we meet the 3, and he tries to find a way that the 3 boys, Jordan, Drew, and Liam, can still be friends and get along with the other all the other kids at the school, whether they are there on scholarship or they are rich students that have paid their complete way. So anyway, this is a graphic novel. It's a great story, and New Kid is the first one, and if you haven't read it, you got to come read it. Come check it out in the graphic novel section. And now we've reached the final book that we're going to talk about for February. It's titled Black Panther, The Young Prince. This is a fantasy. It's written by Ronald Smith, and it is based on the Marvel character Black Panther. But this is written about Black Panther, or T'Challa, when he was in middle school. He's 12 years old, and some conflict has started to happen in Wakanda, and his dad sends T'Challa and his best friend M'Baku to America, but they don't get to go to a fancy school. They actually end up in Southside Chicago, which is a very, very low, poor school, and there's lots of dangerous things happening. But even though T'Challa has like this high-tech suit and he's got a vibranium ring in case of an emergency, he starts to realize he's not really prepared for inner city Chicago middle school, even though he's the prince of this powerful nation. But he does make friends, but he has to hide his true identity. And then M'Baku might start getting involved in the wrong crowd, and T'Challa has to convince him of what's right and wrong. This was on the Lone Star list a few years ago, and it has won some other awards. This is a very good book, especially if you like the Marvel Avengers. You will really enjoy this book about Black Panther. And that concludes our book talks with Mrs. Harris for February. Have a great day.